thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this past year's on-farm trials, winter pea trials, and to prepare for a second year of trials. As I'm sure many of you know, I'm Solveig Hanson and I coordinate the Cover Crop Breeding Network. So today we will meet one another, we'll hear about results from this year's trials, we'll put these results in context of what we already know about these lines from our advanced line trials in the CCB network and our cover crop variety trials. We did the first year of those this year. And then we'll talk about plans for this coming season for our on-farm winter pea trials. And for all of you, but especially those of you who participated in this year's trials, your observations and your suggestions for improvement are very welcome. So many of you are familiar, but for context, the Cover Crop Breeding Network is a collaboration among US universities, ARS research programs, and NRCS plant materials centers. It's grown to include many sites over the years, but for this year we had 9 breeding sites, 2 farmer breeders, 14 advanced line trial sites, and new this year, a dozen national cover crop variety trial sites. So this is the first US public cover crop breeding effort. It started by working on 3 commonly sown overwintering legume crop species, winter pea, hairy vetch, crimson clover, expanded to working with cereal rye, which is the most widely grown fall sown cover crop, and just recently started working on winter canola. So each crop has a leader who handles breeding pipeline design and centralized analysis. I'm just going to check the chat here to make sure. Great, okay. So each crop has a leader who handles breeding pipeline design and selections and advancement for that specific crop. I'm the crop leader for winter pea, which is why you're hearing me talk today. And Cornell is the hub site for the Cover Crop Breeding Network. My boss, Dr. Virginia Moore, is the national project director. And I, as coordinator, get to work on a smaller detail level with over 50 researchers, technicians, students, and farmer collaborators like you all over the country. And this is you, or the sites that participated in this year's on-farm trials. We had 69 sites to start and about 28 sites who completed the trial, or about 40%. So that percentage is neither awful or awesome. So as we talk through the trial results today, we can chat about reasons that people might not have completed the trials and ways that we might encourage trial completion this year. All right, so last fall, you all received a package with 3 varieties of winter pea seed, each of which sowed 15 feet in a single row. You got triticale seed to sow flanks for each row, and you got a protocol. We used the seedling platform for you to submit ratings on either the mobile app or the desktop platform. And then the software compiles plots like this that we'll be looking at today to summarize results in short order and help us glean insights from all of these results from all over the country. As far as the peas, you received 3 of 4 lines. So there were 3 forage type peas and 1 grain type pea. So there we go. These 3 are the forage types. So those are normal leafy peas, the traditional type pea that you may be used to seeing in garden peas. It's vining, it's indeterminate. The stems are full of leaves. We like those. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. We like those because they put on lots and lots of biomass. And as far as cover crops go, that's really the name of the game. Get lots and lots of plant material to work back into the ground. We also included Blaze, which was a semi-leafless type. So that means the terminal 3 leaf pairs are tendrils instead. Those are favored for grain production because the plants tend to stand up and hold hands and make a stand that can be easily harvested with a combine. So Blaze is a shorter stature pea. And I wanted to include it to just see what you all thought, to see if people liked a smaller cover crop pea, maybe it's more manageable, etc. So that's why I put that one in, and just to have something for contrast, so not everything looked quite similar. You took data once in the fall and twice in the spring. And in the spring, the data was taken when plants green up or start to put on new growth in the spring. And then later at about the time you'd normally terminate cover crops for spring planting. We included some diagrams, some planting diagrams to help you decide how you might want to plant. And then you planted. These photos are from Reed Alloway in Quebec. He did 2 rows of peas per vegetable bed. These trials tend to fit really nicely in vegetable production systems since they lend themselves to that planting scale. Okay, so after you planted, things emerged, and we asked you to rate emergence. We provided a rubric for all of the traits to try to have some shared idea of what each number, each site on the scale meant. So for emergence, a 4 meant good, or more than 75% emerged, and then a 3 was acceptable, maybe 75% emergence. So things did pretty well. In germination tests that we did before sending you the seed, everything germinated at or above 93%. So field emergence was a little lower, especially for blaze, but pretty decent emergence across the board. For fall vigor, we asked you to rate how vigorous, robust, fast-growing this variety was. So we did see a range between 3 and 4, so acceptable growth to strong growth. Survivor edged out Wyo Winter and Canandaigua by just a little bit, and Blaze had a little lower fall vigor score, which we would expect since it's that semi-leafless, shorter stature pea. We also included flavor ratings. So the unique thing about winter pea is that it can be both a cover crop and a culinary crop. So a subset of trial participants tasted these peas in both fall and spring to evaluate, or to try them, and then for folks who have vegetable operations, they could potentially integrate into sales. So we evaluated overall flavor and texture. So let's see, for flavor range between, I'd eat it again, but I wouldn't seek it out, and I would eat it again happily. So somewhere in the acceptable to good range. We also see that flavor perception really varies by individual. So that can be an artifact of the environment. If you had colder weather, maybe the peas had gotten a couple of frosts and tasted sweeter. People also vary in their assortment of taste buds and their flavor preferences learned over a lifetime. So something that tastes great to one person may be off-putting to another. But we saw, generally favorable flavor on average. For texture, we saw a very similar range of variation, not a lot of divergence from flavor. One thing we could do in the future is just to have an eating quality parameter instead of flavor and texture. Love your input about that. And then we had winter. So, when we measure winter survival, we just take a ratio of spring stand to fall stand. So how much of what was there in the fall was still there in the spring. Oops, my mouse is being squirrely today. But as we've already talked about, winter conditions are much more complex than just, they include temperature, snow cover, wind, soil moisture. And these are some of the comments that you made. So we had very cold temperatures, but also had a foot of snow cover. So we didn't have any winter kills. That's the interaction between temperature and snow cover. Also, we had less snowfall, so the animals found the peas and ate them. There was actually quite a few people noting animal predation or herbivory on their peas. So that's something to think about for next year. Lauren, thank you for tuning in. You noted that nothing survived. We generally had that theme. Either everything survived or nothing survived. We didn't see differential winter kill among varieties. And Reed in Quebec said almost no survival, tiny bits of growth. So those are some qualitative experiences of winter, of the peas experiencing winter. Quantitatively, we did see a spread in winter survival ratings. So toward 4 is good, 60 to 80% survival. Under 2 is maybe around 40% survival. I guess survivor was true to its name in that it was the furthest toward good survival, although I don't think we can draw too many conclusions about the difference in a 0.2 points, with we had 12 to 15 observations per variety. So we can see a trend, but we've got to be pretty careful about making absolute conclusions from this. In my plots, Canandaigua was more vigorous during the fall. And in winter peas, there's generally a trade-off between fall vigor and winter survival. So plants that put on a lot of biomass in the fall tend to have more winter damage or winter death when it gets cold. So the tissue is more tender and is more vulnerable. So we didn't see those, when we looked at the aggregate fall vigor ratings, we didn't see that Canandaigua had higher fall vigor overall in the respondents. That's something I've noted in my own plot, so I wasn't surprised to see this, but we didn't see that fall vigor winter survival trade-off necessarily in these trials. For winter damage, I was asking you all and myself to rate how much of the plant was damaged after winter. So a 3 was partial damage to the stem, the upper quarter of the plant. 4 was pretty good. Leaves were affected, but stems weren't too affected. All of these ratings are in the acceptable range. I personally found this trait hard to rate. There was quite a range of damage within the plot, so it was a challenge to find an average, which may be why everything on average was about average. And I also found that it really mattered which day I went out there, because the peas did recover rapidly when the weather warmed up a bit. So this was a hard one for me. I would love to hear your feedback, whether you think this is useful to rate in future trials or if we should skip it. And then spring vigor. Again, everything averaged out right about 3, acceptable. So things weren't blowing people away with their robust growth, but things were fine. So I'm curious also about ways to make this rating more precise. Like, should we say early biomass? So we're really explicit about saying we want to know how big the plants are. Should we explore imaging options? Seedlink does have a feature now where you can submit quantitative data through the app. So that's something to think about. And then we come to spring termination time, which seems a harsh word. Maybe transformation is more palatable, since the end of the pea plant means the beginning of more soil and your next crop. But in any case, this is the point at which you would till, roll, or spray the cover crop to make space for your spring food or feed crop. And plants, including peas, tend to terminate best once they've reached flowering or their reproductive stage. These are some really nice photos from Chris Jones up in Maine. So at termination time, we asked you to evaluate how much biomass each variety accumulated. So 3 was moderate biomass, moderate but not abundant. 2 was small to moderate plants, weakly competitive with weeds. So Survivor did a bit better than the rest, which is pretty interesting. I'll talk a little bit more later about why that might be. Canandaigua and Winter were quite similar in that moderate biomass rating. And then Blaze was a little lower, again, not surprising. Whoops, goodness. Not surprising because it's just a shorter stature plant. Chris Jones, who had those really nice pictures of the peas in flowering stage, also did a physical biomass harvest and then took a picture for us of how much biomass the 3 varieties accumulated for him. So for him, the clear winner was Canandaigua. Oops, my mouse is all over the place. There we go. And I hadn't thought about this kind of this way to present biomass. Curious about your thoughts. This could be a pretty doable thing for folks to do if you feel like taking if you feel like cutting the plants. We can chat. And then we asked about overall performance. So would you grow this variety again? And 3 was I'd grow it again, but not seek it out. 4 would grow again gladly. So again, in the range between willingness and gladness, but all pretty similar among the varieties. When we asked this question in a binary yes, no context, we got some different insights. So all 3 of the forage varieties, these 3 were fairly popular. So between 77 and 85% of participants would grow these again, with Survivor being the slim favorite, which is in keeping with all of the other results we've seen. Survivor just nudged out the other 2 Austrian winter pea or normal leaf varieties. So Blaze was less popular, I'm guessing due to its shorter stature. So why did we see such similar results? So I chose varieties that had done well in CCB trials, which you'll see in a moment. And I didn't want to frustrate you all by having you grow varieties that I know tended not to perform that well. So the good thing is that, you had, for those of you for whom the peas survived, things did relatively well. And then for those of you for whom nothing survived, nothing did well. But we didn't see that differential winter kill, which is interesting. And that's a feature we didn't get because of the varieties, I think, that I chose. And then the other thing is that our 1 to 5 ratings can only reflect so much difference. We can only get so granular with those 5 numbers. So we'd need either quantitative data or more participants to see finer differences. But we did validate that what we've seen in our replicated trials in terms of these varieties being strong performers in general is also accurate on your farms. So that sets the stage for us to trial some CCB varieties on your farms in this coming year. And another benefit to using commercially available varieties is that they are available to you if you want to buy them. So I've linked here where these lines are available to buy. They are all available just in 50-pound bags, which I realize for those of you on the garden scale is not particularly useful. There are a couple seed companies. The ones I found are Hudson Valley Seed Company and Osborne Quality Seeds, so on the East and West Coast respectively, that do sell variety not stated Austrian winter peas in smaller quantities for garden scales. So I can send all those links in a follow-up email if you're interested in purchasing them for use in your garden in general, garden or farm. So how do these trials fit into the Cover Crop Breeding Network's process? To breed for cover crop performance, We source or develop germplasm, observe it and select it in nurseries, then go into advanced line trials and the variety testing network to choose the best lines, to observe them side by side. Concurrently, we run seed yield trials, first in one site, then in several, to inform our breeding process. So we can cull lines with poor seed yield or identify lines with exceptional seed yield. And then finally, we move toward commercialization. The on-farm trials fit in right here as kind of a complement to our advanced line trials. They allow us to see things in more places and to especially test winter hardiness. For peas, that's a big focus. So our advanced line trials, here's our pea advanced line trials. They are single 15-foot row plots flanked by triticale to simulate competition. We note them for fall and spring vigor, fall and spring stand, and then we harvest the biomass at the same time as you would when farmers in the area would terminate the crop. So this has become really a cornerstone of our program. We've gotten 6 or 7 years of results from many sites per year. So we've gotten to, we've been able to get a really good idea of genotypic versus environmental variation for these different traits that are important to us. So your trial plots are analogous to these. Oops. That didn't animate right. There we go. Okay, so this is a lot to look at. I will orient you. Don't try to take in everything at once. So up here, or I guess our entries include both CCB experimental lines and checks. These trait scores are a % of our best check, which is Wyo Winter. You'll see it right there. We are using a selection index here that takes into account biomass, winter survival, fall vigor, and spring vigor. We note here the number of locations that we've observed it. So a location is a site year combination. I'm only showing varieties with more than 2 years of testing and more than 8 locations or site years of testing. Wyo Winter is the best check in our trials. I wonder, and then we see Survivor as the next best, but it's still down below quite a few experimental lines. In our trialing network, we tend to sample biomass potentially earlier in the season than some of you did. So kind of in that mid-May range before organic corn or before soybean planting. Survivor is later flowering. So if you harvested later in the season, later in May, say, depending on where you are, Survivor might have had more time to pump out more biomass before it flowered. So I wonder if that's why we're seeing Survivor being the biomass winner in your trials, while it hasn't been so much in ours. The other factor is that Wyo Winter's been trialed for 33 site years. So it's been in our program for a long time, and Survivor is newer as a check. So it's only been trialed 13 times. We just don't have the base of knowledge on it that we do for Wyo Winter. You'll see Blaze has a really excellent winter survival score. That's really where it shines, and that's part of the reason I included it in your trials. But it doesn't have the biomass that the others do. Canandaigua was first entered this past year in our trials, so it is not on this sheet. Whoop. Oh, also notably, sorry, these 2 in purple are lines that we have available for release. Gosh, I'm sorry about the slides going back and forth. One of them is CCB Doodla Diehard, and I see that Mark Doodla has joined this call, which is great. So this pea was selected by Lisa, who's also on the call, and Mark on his family farm in Evansville, Wisconsin. Mark's been one of our participating farmer breeders. So across more than 30 site years of trialing, it's outperformed Wyo Winter for fall vigor, spring vigor, and biomass while maintaining winter survival. So like I talked about that trade-off between fall vigor and winter survival and winter pea. So we're getting the same winter survival with more fall vigor, which can be more weed competitiveness, things like that. So we're excited about that. And it's been very widely trialed in just about as many years as YO winter. So we feel really confident about this one. And this will be included in all of the on-farm trials this coming season. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. The other one is On Plenty. This was selected at North Carolina State by a couple of breeders there. One is a faculty member, one was a grad student who is now graduated. It's shown really nice fall and spring vigor compared to YO winter, and it does well in moderate winter conditions. So it's not going to be the most winter hardy in cold places, but it will, I think, do well in the region for which it was bred, so the mid-Atlantic. So this one I'm targeting for Megan's trials in Virginia, although I'm open to ideas about including it in the northern trial just to be able to see some differential winter kill. And then the last piece is our national cover crop variety trials that Etienne is managing. So these are larger plots. So we're getting a little bit more toward the scale that a farmer would plant. These are 5-foot research plot passes rather than, a full drill width. So we are looking at 5 species, 5 varieties per species, and 12 sites. And I just pulled a few results out of the trial report, which is at this link down there. Etienne, maybe you have capacity to drop that in the chat for people if they want to look at the whole report. But so you'll see that at Freeville right here, we had not much differential interkill. Everything, goodness gracious, everything survived pretty well. But YO winter and Survivor were 2 of the better for biomass. In Pennsylvania, we saw quite different winter survival, but again, YO winter and Survivor were top tier for biomass. So that's confirming the same kind of results we've seen in our advanced line trials. Also differential winter kill in Vermont with YO winter and Survivor on top. And then down in Maryland, not much winter kill at all, and also not much significant difference in spring biomass. So that's a taste of results from the national variety trial. You're welcome to take a look at the full report. Etienne did a really nice job compiling it. Yeah, and what's coming up? So for the Cornell trials, which are targeted toward the cold winter sites, kind of the same regions we were looking at last year, I'm planning for all of you to receive the Doodle Die-Hard, and then the 3 forage type checks, BioWinter, Survivor, and Canandaigua, will be randomized. So you'll each get 3 lines. And then for Virginia Tech, we're going to use BioWinter as a check, and then the Doodle Die-Hard, Autumn Beauty, and Canandaigua will be randomized. The other changes I'm thinking about are not using the triticale borders. I'm not sure how necessary they are, and I heard some folks not enjoying dealing with them, but I'm open to input on that. I'm going to recommend fencing or netting for folks on small scales who might have animals close by to enjoy the peas, so we can have more success. And then I'm leaning toward not using winter damage ratings or ease of termination ratings because I am not convinced they're super meaningful on trials this scale. Would love to hear your feedback on whether we should continue to measure flavor and texture or just use one eating quality rating. And any other suggestions are welcome as well. If you haven't signed up and would like to for the trial this year, scan that QR code, click that link. I'll also send it out in a follow-up email. We have 20 people signed up. I'd love to get 40. So tell your friends if you think they're likely to return data and enjoy growing winter peas. And big thanks to all of you for returning, for participating in the trials, for sharing your observations, to Nico for building and maintaining the seedling platform, and to our funders, the USDA-NIFA program, OREI, and SASCAP have financed this work. So I'll end my slide.
This is a production of Cornell University.